What's up, witches?
What's up?
I'm Linda,
And I'm John.
and this, of course, is Getting
Getting
Witchy.
witchy.
And today we're talking about herb magic. So, if you don't know what herb magic is, it's one of the oldest forms of folk magic. It's a natural way to experience the mystery of nature's wisdom, and yes, nature is very wise. And it's a way to basically take the powers and abilities of plants and direct them into your magic. So,
Nice. What?
okay. So if you don't know what an herb is, in this day and age, it's basically any plant that can be used for food, medicine, flavoring, or scent. So a lot of incensers are made from plants. Essential oils are made from plants. And when you think about it, I mean, back before pharmaceuticals existed, back before pills and cough syrups and all that, herbs was our main form of pain relief, medicines, dietary supplements, seasonings, all that.
Right. And recently, I was reading something a while back that they found a plant, I think it was in the Amazon, and I could be combining two different stories, but you know me. But they were both by science. If I'm correct that I'm combining two stories, they were by a science journal. A plant that they just don't know if they just discovered or they just discovered that it is beneficial in the treatment of Alzheimer's or dementia, one of those
Right.
debilitating things. And then later in the article, it guesstimated, now, and it's a guesstimate, obviously, that there are probably remedies for every ailment somewhere in the Amazon or in nature in general.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, if we'd stop fucking with pills and synthetics.
Right.
Like, THC was, well, now it's legal in a lot of places, but
Right.
they were keeping it illegal, but then you could get synthetic THC made in a lab.
Right.
And that was legal for, like, cancer treatment patients.
Right.
But anyway, I digress.
Well, and the whole thing is at least what I learned in herbalism school, is that the whole reason why many plants like cannabis are being, the public is being pushed away from, is because you can't patent something that naturally occurs.
Right.
So Big Pharma can't make any money off of it.
Right. Well,
Which is why they're pushing pills, which they will take a component of a plant, isolate it to find out what it does and how it works, and then synthetically create that in a lab. But then the side effects are
right. There's
worse than
50
the
million
disease
side effects.
itself.
Well, it's all about greed. I mean, the whole thing with cannabis, well, one of, not the whole aspect or the only reason that it was made illegal, but if you can't grow cannabis, then you can't have hemp. Even though they're different, because hemp doesn't really have the THC that cannabis does, but it's very similar in the makeup. So by making one illegal, the other is, and hemp is great for ropes, great for toilet paper, it's clothing. It grows faster than trees.
Right.
But one of the biggest advocates from some research I did a long time ago for illegalizing it was someone that had a paper mill.
Oh, of course.
He was a major player in lumber and that type of thing. But anyway, again, I digress. So, now, to get the most out of whatever herbs you're using, you need to understand the elemental powers of that plant or plant life in general, and to understand what that plant is good for, and know its limitations, because sometimes too much of a good thing can be bad.
Yes.
And sometimes very little of a bad thing can be good.
Right.
it's kind of tricky there. But
well, and also in some cases, if you don't have a particular condition, so like let's say with foxglove, which has digitalis in it, that's where we get digitalis from, which is a heart medication. If you have that particular heart issue, then digitalis can help you. But if you don't have that issue and you take digitalis, it causes
right.
you to have that issue.
I was telling Dirk about that one day, and he's like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Really? I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah. So, and that's the way some plants are. If you have the issue, they'll help you. But if you don't have the issue, they cause the issue.
Right.
In you, because that's what they do.
What they do. So, what determines a plant's powers and abilities would be growing habits or environment.
Right, where it grows.
The scent, the color, texture, like how it feels, but also if it's edible, how it would feel in the mouth and taste, as well as the shape of it.
Yeah, so like what it looks like. So like with a
so
walnut.
This isn't an Ed Sheeran song? The
No.
shape of you? Okay.
No, but like if you look at a walnut outside of the shell, it looks like a brain.
Yeah.
And walnuts are good for the brain. You know, so it's stuff like that. Like sometimes the color, if it's white, it'll be good for the white parts of the body, like the teeth. The bones, stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Some ways to become connected with plants. Of course, spend time outside within nature. Walk barefooted, if possible. Sit with a plant that interests you, or sit. What I used to do to connect with nature was to sit under a tree. I was barefoot, but I would sit under a tree and just meditate, and I could feel the living beings around me. Mm-hmm. Observe the plant, draw it, draw what you see. What is that?
So another way you can get connected with plants is to do an organoleptic assessment, which is using your senses. What does the plant look like? If it's edible, what does it taste like? Mm-hmm. This was a big one when we were taking botany in our herbalism course. Was we were given plants, we weren't always told what they were. Actually, we were never told what they were ahead of time, but we were encouraged to, take a little piece and taste it. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was arugula that when I tasted it, it was like kind of popping on my tongue, and then it started to taste like our sauteed chicken with like the garlic and the pepper. And I was like, oh, why does it taste like chicken? And everyone was like, chicken? I'm like, yeah, that's what it tastes like to me. It tastes like sauteed chicken.
It's the Matrix.
What does the plant smell like? Like recently we got a gardenia plant, and I was checking out, I think, gardenias at the garden center after we got ours. But there was one that happened to had an open flower, and I smelled it, and it was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of a cross between magnolia and vanilla. And I think I had mentioned that to you before. But, like, what does it smell like to you? What do the leaves and the stems and the flowers look like? What do they feel like? Like, do they have little pricklies on them? Are they smooth? With the leaves, are the edges serrated or scalloped in any way? But basically just use all of your senses. Mean? Kind of like the bricks we have outside in the circles.
So people will understand?
So if they're like, just little...
Okay. Almost like fingers.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
How you can obtain your herbs. You can either wildcraft them, which means you forage out in the wild for them, as long as they are not endangered. You can cultivate them or grow them in your own garden, or you can purchase them from a grocery store, farmer's market, herb shop, or metaphysics shop. If you do a quick Google search for herb shops or apothecaries in your area, I'm sure you'll get a list of places that sell a wide variety of herbs.
And some places like Winco, if you've got a Winco in your neighborhood, actually sell it in bulk, as doesn't, and again, we don't mean to advertise these
Sprouts does
locations, and we don't necessarily shop at Sprouts, but we go there sometimes for essential oils because they have a pretty big variety,
Yes.
and for herbs because it's in bulk.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah, and usually with Sprouts and Winco, like the prices on those will be a lot more affordable than the
Especially
apothecaries.
in bulk.
Yes, because
Well, even in the jars,
yeah,
like at the grocery store, which you can
right.
use.
Yes.
I mean, there's
yes.
nothing wrong with buying, if you need rosemary.
The rosemary you get
At the
from the
grocery
spice
store.
aisle in the grocery store is going to be the exact same rosemary that's grown in the garden.
And now, it's always better to use fresh if you can, but for a rosemary tea for just general ailments that I made once for my mom, had a whole bunch of stuff in it, but it was primarily rosemary. One time I made it with and one time without, and yes, the one with fresh was more aromatic and a slightly stronger taste, but the one with the dried herbs was, you just have to use a little bit more.
Right.
That's all. Anyway, sorry.
So if you do decide to wildcraft your herbs, there are a few do's and don'ts. The first one is going to be, and these aren't really in any specific order, but do not take the first plant you find.
Why?
Because it might be the only one.
Mm.
So if you come across one and it's the first one you found and you take it, it might be the only one in that area. And it's important to leave it there.
Okay.
Well,
you don't want to harvest it down to the nub anyway, do you?
Well, no.
Okay.
But, I mean, some people will just go out, like if... So this is one of the other ones. Basically, don't take more than what you need. We prefer, or it's been recommended that you don't take more than 1/8 of a particular plant. So, like...
Okay.
And each one is going to be its own, you know. So, like, if you walk up and you find 5 different, let's say, yarrow bushes, you wouldn't want to take more than 1/8 of each one, but you only want to take what you need.
Right. Okay.
You don't want to take the last plant you find, and I don't know why that is important, but, like, if there's a grove of 10, and, you know, like leave some for other people and for nature, because nature needs those too. Do not take from a private or public garden without permission, and my suggestion would be make sure you get that permission in writing, because if, you know, some places oral agreements are not upheld. But also you don't want to take from somebody else's garden without permission, because you're stealing at that point.
And trespassing.
Yes. Don't collect from national parks or nature preserves. This is a huge one, because not only can you be fined for this, and if you're caught, you will get fined for it, but there's a reason why these parks and preserves are in place, and that is to preserve the nature that is within them. So, I mean, if everybody went to the Grand Canyon and took a rock,
well,
at some point, there's no Grand Canyon.
Right, but I mean, that's the same thing with the petrified forests. I forget where they're at. I think Arizona, there's some. If you actually go to the site of where the petrified forest is, you're not allowed to take any pieces that you find on the ground.
Right.
People do.
People do,
But
yes.
you're not supposed to, and it's just like lava from a volcano in Hawaii. From what I understand, you're not allowed to take it. It's considered bad luck and a bad omen.
Yeah. So,
supposedly, I don't know. I haven't been there, but that's what I've been told by people that live there.
So yeah, if it's a protected area, do not take anything from it. You do want to make sure that when you are taking pieces from the plant that you are using either a sharp knife or a pair of garden scissors.
Yeah, don't just rip it off.
Yeah, because that could damage the plant, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure your equipment is clean and sharp. The reason for this is that if let's say you use a pair of gardening shears, if they have rust on them and you cut the plant, the rust could end up in the plant, which would then poison the plant and harm it in ways that you don't want to be responsible for.
Right. You did not intend.
Right. do leave an offering for the plant, whether it's water, fertilizer, incense, tobacco, something to honor the plant and thank it for its sacrifice for you. You want to make sure you know how to identify plants properly. This is super important because there are some plants that look identical. I know there's one that yarrow looks exactly like, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but the one it looks like is super freaking poisonous, and you wouldn't want to use that for something that you would use yarrow for. So yeah, make sure if you're going to go out wildcrafting that you have some form of plant identification guide. There are some specifically made for your state, so make sure you get one of those so that you can take it out into the wild with you and identify the plants. And again, like we mentioned before, you want to make sure you take the smallest amount of plant that is necessary, preferably no more than 1/8 of the plant. Once you get your items home, you want to make sure that you label them, not only with the name, but also with the date that it was collected and any restrictions, such as if it is not to be handled during pregnancy, or if it is one of those toxic plants that should not be ingested at all. You want to make sure that that information is on your label, and it is best to store them in an airtight, non-porous glass jar away from direct sunlight. Basically because direct sunlight will end up fading them, right, and kind of strip them of...
Bleach them.
Yeah, it'll bleach them and strip them of what they need. And it's been recommended that you don't keep them for more than a year. Which, I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody has some sort of spice up in their spice cabinet that's been there for longer than a year. Yeah. Marjoram seems to be the one in our cabinet.
Now, ways that you can use herbs in magic would be in sachets or charm bags, poppets.
The dolls. Like voodoo dolls? Like the...
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Infusions, like with bath water or drinks. Decoctions.
Okay, so there is a difference between infusions and decoctions. Infusions are a liquid extract, usually made with water, that uses the leafy parts of the herb. So the stems, the leaves, the flowers. Whereas a decoction is the same thing, and usually with an infusion, you just steep it. Mm-hmm. You pour the boiling water over it, mm-hmm, and let it steep. With a decoction, it's going to use the more hardy parts of the plant, the barks, the roots, the berries.
And it's going to soak for a month or
Well,
more.
No. You're going to simmer it.
Oh.
These are the ones that get simmered on the stove. So kind of like a simmer pot, if you ever made one of those. It's the same thing. And then a tea is basically...
tea?
Yeah, it's... Basically, could be either one of those.
And then, as I mentioned also, because it goes with infusions, would be bath water. Right. Ointments, infused oils, which can be done either by soaking it in, like garlic oil is best made with whole cloves and olive oil, and then bake it at a low temperature. So it doesn't like cook the oil,
right,
which is hard to do anyway with olive oil. But and obviously that would be mostly for food preparation.
Right.
But anyway, you can make your own incense, spell jars or witches jars, which we are going to be doing. We hadn't mentioned that, but we're doing a crystal grid, or maybe we did last night. Anyway, we're going to be doing a crystal grid around our home. So we're combining multiple aspects of magic. We've got a crystal grid going on. We're making witches jars, and well, with witches jars are protection jars, because that's what a witches jar really was for. So that will be another video that we do in the next day or two, maybe today. Yeah. Won't get published or uploaded today, but anyway. And of course, essential oils.
Right.
Now, elemental herbs that can be used in place of earth for any spell that whether it be a grounding charm bag or sachet, or I mean, hell, even in cooking,
Hmm.
or for your altar. There's barley, buckwheat, corn, cypress, ferns, honeysuckle, magnolia, mugwort. Again, this is one of those not to be used during pregnancy. Mugwort is oats, primrose, tulip, vervain, and wheat can be used and as the element of earth in spells.
Herbs that have an elemental
Attachment.
correspondence
Yeah.
to air would include almond, anise, aspen, borage, chicory, clover, dandelion, lavender, lemongrass, lemon verbena, mace, maple, marjoram, mint, orange bergamot, parsley, pine, which is a common allergen, so you have to be careful with that one, sage, and witch hazel. Herbs that have a correspondence to fire would include allspice, fiery, angelica, ash, basil, bay, carnation, cedar, chili pepper, which you definitely want to make sure you don't get anywhere near your eyes. And if you are handling them without gloves on, make sure you wash your hands before you touch any sensitive parts of your body. Trust me. Cinnamon, clove, coneflower, coriander, dill, which I found interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Fennel, garlic, ginger, hawthorn, heliotrope, which you want to be careful with that one, especially if you're going to be wildcrafting it, because it may cause contact dermatitis, so wear gloves. Holly, hyssop, marigold, mullein, mustard, oak, orange, pepper, rosemary, again I found interesting, rowan, rue, which is toxic, and you definitely want to make sure you do not handle that while pregnant, St. John's wort, snapdragon, sunflower, sweet woodruff, thistle, and walnut, which is a common allergen.
Now, every depending on the material you're using, you may get some different suggestions.
Yes.
On these. These are what we use or how we use them. And if you think about, like, some might wonder, sunflower. Why would sunflower represent fire? Well, it's a sunflower. It looks like the sun. It thrives on sunlight.
And it follows the sun.
Yes, yes.
A sunflower always points in the direction that the sun is at.
Yeah, we found that, but we've got some sunflowers growing, and they're about, I don't know, about 16 inches tall at this point, and they literally, even before you can see the sun, they are facing the east, and then if you go out every few hours, it's turning with the sun. It's cool as hell. But so that's why sunflower is under the elemental herbs of fire. Others like pepper and allspice, that's obvious.
Right,
Clove is
spicy.
obvious, right? Garlic and ginger, obvious. I'm kind of surprised that raw wasabi, which is expensive as hell and hard to get, because most wasabi is fake.
Yeah, most wasabi is horseradish.
Right, but I'm kind of surprised that's not on the list.
Well, this is not an all-inclusive list either.
True.
This is just...
True. Again, like I said, you might find some other things in other resources that aren't on here. Herbs that would be associated with the element of water, African violet, aloe, which is, that makes sense. It's edible right off just cut it and you could eat it just the way it is.
And its gel is used to soothe sunburns.
Right. Apples, birch, catnip, chamomile, comfrey, elder, the tree and the berries, elm, eucalyptus, again, another common allergen, so be careful handling that. Is that feverfew?
Yeah.
Pronounced just the way, feverfew, gardenia. Ooh.
Yep.
Heather, iris, which, by the way, our gardenia plant is doing really well, but all the buds that have tried to bloom have eventually just fallen off. And we were thinking it was probably because of the bougainvillea that was robbing it of nutrients, because it does seem kind of stunted. It's not growing very fast.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But she is doing better since we took those out.
Yes, that was a task.
So you left off after.
Heather, Iris, Jasmine, Lady's Mantle, lemon balm. Wasn't that in another one too?
Well, we had lemongrass and lemon verbena.
Okay. Because you might also find some that
some do overlap.
That go back and forth.
Although not necessarily with the elementals.
Right. Mallow. Is that where marshmallow comes from? Or is that a different one?
There's different mallows. But there is a marshmallow plant.
We've had that conversation before.
Yes.
Pansy, periwinkle, toxic. Poplar, raspberry, rose, spearmint, strawberry, another common allergen. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sweet pea, tansy, vanilla, violet, wintergreen, yarrow, may cause contact dermatitis, and again, avoid handling while pregnant.
Yes.
Okay, so now, so those are the herbs that would be associated with the various elements, whether it be for ritual or specific spells or tasks that you need an herb that represents that element for the spell. Now these are going to be the planetary and or astrological herbs, or herbs associated with planetary and astrological signs. For the sun or Sunday, be Angelica or Angelica, ash, bay. Well, I bet Angelica is the proper way to say it. Carnation, cedar, chamomile, chrysanthemum. Say that 7 times fast. Cinnamon, heliotrope, juniper, marigold, oak, orange. Is that peony?
Peony.
Peony?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Rosemary, rowan, rue. Again, we already said rue is bad.
Well, I mean, not bad,
but toxic. St. John's wort, sunflower, and witch hazel. So rue would be great to use in a banishing or leave me the fuck alone spell.
Yeah, I would think so.
So, and then Monday would be aloe, eucalyptus, gardenia, grape.
Yes, there's a plant called honesty.
There's a plant called honesty. Okay. Jasmine, lemon, lucistrife, mallow, moonflower, mildly toxic, poppy, pumpkin, sandalwood, willow, and wintergreen. And there are many varieties of poppy.
Yes.
They almost all have some
sedative property.
Sedative properties to them, but anything that you're going to find in the Americas is not necessarily going to be anything close to what's in other countries that they make illegal substances from. So, but use with caution in any event.
Yes. All right. Mars, which rules Tuesday. You have allspice, basil, chili pepper, coriander, dragon's blood, which actually, when you find it, it's going to be more of a resin, not necessarily an herb, but resins can be used too. Mm-hmm. Garlic, ginger, hawthorn, holly, mustard, nettle, onion, pepper, peppermint, pine, snapdragon, sweet woodruff, thistle, and yucca. Now, one thing that I found interesting about the herbs associated with Mars when I was doing the research is that a lot of them are used in protection.
Yes, and or I noticed is there's a lot of spicy there.
Well, yes, because Mars is spicy.
Yes,
Mars is
the god of war.
Yes.
So I found that interesting.
Yeah, and so one thing, it says nettle, it doesn't give a specific nettle. There are a couple different kinds of nettles, but And there's also a couple different kinds of thistle.
Hmm.
But it doesn't, none of the research goes into specifics, so it's basically just like
All-encompassing.
all-encompassing. Mercury, which rules Wednesday. That's going to be almond, aspen, celery, clover, dill, fennel, ferns, horehound, lavender, lemongrass, mace, marjoram, mint, parsley, and pomegranate. And I'm actually kind of surprised that rosemary isn't on that list, considering the fact that Mercury was the god of communication. He was the one that actually started.
He was the one with the winged, either the winged hat or the winged.
Well, both.
Boots.
Both, actually.
And he was the messenger of the gods.
The messenger of the gods.
Yes.
And he was also one of the smartest gods. He was the one that stole the other gods' sheep before he was even a day old.
Mm.
So
why is it surprising that rosemary's not on there?
Because rosemary is a very good herb for remembering things and retaining knowledge and communication.
Okay.
But anyway.
So Thursday ruled by Jupiter. There is anise, betony, borage, cinquefoil, clove, dandelion, honeysuckle, hyssop, linden, maple, meadowsweet, nutmeg, oak, and sage.
So one cool thing about meadowsweet is actually where we got our first aspirin from.
Huh?
She's a very good pain reliever.
So then automatically there is a disclaimer there. Be careful. I mean, if it's a pain reliever, it can be abused.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Think about humans.
Yeah.
Were you going to go?
Yeah, you can do.
Friday, which is ruled by Venus, would be apples, aster, bananas, barley.
What?
What was the giggle for?
Keep going.
Birch, blackberry, catnip, cherries, columbine, elder, feverfew, foxglove, again toxic. Another one that's toxic.
That's
so be
where
careful.
we get digitalis from.
Geranium, heather, iris, lady's mantle, lilac, magnolia, oats, orchids, periwinkle, primrose, raspberry, rose, spearmint, strawberry, tansy, thyme, valerian, vanilla, vervain, violet, wheat, and willow. Saturday, obviously ruled by Saturn, would be amaranth. Amaranth. I don't know how do I see an extra. Okay.
I don't know.
Beech, belladonna. It's got toxic in parentheses, but can be fun. Comfrey, cypress, elm. Hellebore.
Also toxic.
Yeah. Then it's not hella boring, is it? Hellebore, get it? Okay. Ivy, the berries are toxic, and obviously, depending on the ivy, you could have issues. Mullein, pansy, patchouli, poplar, quince, slippery elm.
Yes.
Who comes up with these names? And yew, which is also toxic. Well, not yew, but YEW. So those would be the associations, the astrological or planetary associations with the various herbs. Again, not a complete list,
right?
But a pretty sizable one, gives you lots of options.
Yes. And options that are somewhat easily attainable.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to some of the other herbs that I've come across in my 20-something
And if you
years.
want to grow any of the herbs that are toxic or have the possibility of being toxic or are sedative in nature, which could be toxic if ingesting too much. Make sure you check your local municipality laws before growing anything that could be construed as harmful. You know, you ain't got to worry about basil, oregano, frickin' rosemary, or any of that stuff. But if it has any kind of toxicity to it, you want to make sure that it's okay for you to grow. I mean, hell, you can't even grow weed and it's not toxic. So just,
no, but they let you have oleander in your yard, and that's toxic to everything.
Yeah, it is. So these, what we're going to go over now, are herbs that can be used for specific spells. Like herbs for love and happiness spells would be basil, chili pepper.
Yeah,
if you want to add spice,
yeah,
some passion.
love.
Okay. Well, again, I guess it's the intent on the use too.
Yes.
Columbine, maple, marjoram, rose, rosemary, strawberry, thyme, vanilla bean, violet, willow, and yarrow. In addition, if you wanted to do some cross spell work, rose quartz, regular quartz,
a pink or a red candle.
Yeah, pink or red candle,
depending on the intent.
So.
See, and that's another. I'm actually kind of glad you brought in the cross. I almost said pollination, but the cross spell work.
Mm-hmm.
Herbs can also be used in candle magic. Basically, you dress the candle with whatever oil you're going to use, and then roll them in the herbs.
Yeah, I've done that. Or you could sprinkle the herb over the flame.
Right. So, yeah, that's another way they can be used. Herbs that are good for healing or health spells are going to include ash, chamomile, coriander, dianthus, which I actually saw that in our garden center a little while ago, and they are so cute. They have the cutest little tiny flowers. But anyway, feverfew, lady's mantle, mace, nutmeg, parsley, purple coneflower, sage, and witch hazel.
And no, we don't have a garden center. She's just referring to the store that we typically go to.
Yes.
Although that would probably be a good side hustle. Just grow herbs. Fresh herbs.
If we could get them to grow.
I know, we have we've got some good stuff growing out there. The corn is doing amazing. The tomatoes taking its time. The sunflowers are phenomenal.
The elder tree's doing good.
The elder tree's doing good, but we just nothing else seems to want to freaking grow. I mean, I realize it's Arizona.
Yeah.
So
and
even
summer.
in the shade, it's 115 fucking degrees. Go ahead.
Herbs that can be used for protection spells include anise, bay leaf, birch, calendula, which is also known as pot marigold, dill, elder, garlic, holly, lamb's ear, lavender, and rue. And again,
So
protection, banishing.
right.
Well,
What's interesting is like bay leaf is part of the witch's jar.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I use in that, along with pieces of glass or nails,
right.
thorns. But yeah, but I don't. There's more for protection spells. I mean, isn't oregano?
Well, yeah, but again, these lists are not all encompassing. This is
True.
just like a
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Cliff Notes version.
Now, herbs for prosperity and abundance spells: allspice, cinnamon, cinquefoil, clover, ginger, heliotrope, honeysuckle, mint, oak, oats, periwinkle, and pine. Now, again, for the cross use of magic, citrine, green aventurine, again quartz because it magnifies others, and a green candle or a gold candle. So, yeah. I guess that was
that
it.
is that's
Oh, yep. Okay. So there you have it. There's several lists of spells. I mean, spells. Well, some suggestions on things that you can use for certain spells. But herbology in a nutshell as far as what you can use for what and some of the precautions. Some. Please make sure if you're going to use something that's not used every day, like oregano or rosemary or something that's in your cabinet, make sure you look up its attributes, not just what it's good for, but what its chemical makeup.
So basically. There actually is if you go to USDA.gov, you can actually look up plants and see like if they have any sort of toxic restrictions. It'll tell you if they have any sort of interactions.
Probably be a good spot to tell you if you could grow it or not too.
Or medications.
Right.
But if this is something that you are really, really finding yourself passionate about, working with herbs and plants, check out the, especially if you're here in the United States, the American Herbalist Guild's website, because they have a lot of information about plants and how they can be used not only for like cooking but also for medicinal purposes. And they have information about the safety and efficacy of the different plants.
And if you do have a store, like we had a grocery store, neighborhood grocery store when we lived in AJ, Apache Junction, that apparently had been there for like 20 years. They sold, or more, they sold a lot of herbs in bulk. And they had some obscure shit.
Yes,
like,
they did.
They had the old style cookie jars that sat with the lid that you pull off, and it'd be stuffed with herbs. And because of growth changes and changes to the layout of the storefront area that it was in, it started to get run down and people stopped going to it, and it's now closed a couple years. So if you've got one in your area, support it. They're following their passion to help you follow yours. So that's all I've got to say.
All right, well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Getting Witchy. Coming up, we do have our crystal grid witches jars.
Yes.
And
this one may or may not get put. We're kind of doing these right now, to be honest, because it's been so long since we did any recordings that we're going to do several and then release them over a period of time. So you might not get them all like right away, but this will be posted soon, probably tomorrow. Maybe.
Have
a great weekend. We love you. Peace out, witches.
Peace out, witches.